It is real. I actually cannot believe it, but it is real. There was a new BBE drop that somehow got tied to a sea of assets. And all of those assets were somehow linked to League of Legends Classic. Yes, it is real. Let's talk about it. So the news actually first arrived from Julex Gameplays, who decided to dive into the latest PBE drop because there was a lot of things to go through. And it turns out among all the new things that were getting processed, there were also new assets. Or were they really new? Because it all comes from assets that were made for something new, but we can recognize them as some really well-known classics. Just look at the glorious old Mundo, which is a standalone asset that is buried somewhere in the files. And it turns out, if you really decide to dig through all of these new assets, you can figure out a lot of what is actually going on. But first, a super quick recap for the context. This is not the first time we've heard about League of Legends Classic potentially being in development. No, the first time this info got out was because of some pro players who didn't know that Riot has not announced it. And so they just casually mentioned League Classic on their streams. Which, I'll be honest, totally makes sense. Every company under the sun is currently trying to remake the old versions of their live service games, and somehow it always works. Classic WoW was an insane success that blew up all of Blizzard's servers, old school RuneScape became the most played RuneScape there is, and even Guild Wars announced Guild Wars 3, but they still keep their old games alive. And honestly, this all stems from insert the video game remastered. I mean, no matter how many times you will remaster a game, re-releases will always sell. And so, I have no doubt that League of Legends Classic will be successful, but I wonder how popular it will actually be. I don't think it will be as big as something like Classic WoW, because that one was the clear winner so far. When it came out, the devs didn't expect that kind of a success, and it completely overshadowed all of their other games for an entire year, including the modern version of WoW. And somehow, I don't believe League is gonna do that. I don't think the gameplay really evolved that much for people to cling onto the older version of the game. Although, with that said, I do remember the game being a lot slower. Champions had lower movement speed and most of the abilities were point and clicks, so there was nothing to dodge. And there is the potential that this old school gameplay combined with the power of nostalgia can carry this far. Especially since the vibes back then were a lot more chill, even if the in-game chat was as spicy as it is these days. And so, how different will the game actually be? Well, that would depend on the patch. And it turns out you can kinda guess what era Riot is going for from the assets alone. And spoiler alert, things are about to get weird. So first, some of the initial assets that were found come from the client itself. So first, there is the logo of the game mode, which would be just a classic L. Then there is the image that appears when you select a game mode. In this case, they are using the background art that was used for Season 2 onwards, with the art for accepting the queue being the same one. And then we get onto this loading screen, which is brand new. But you can notice it does include the good old classic map. The one with no alcoves and no crazy openings around. But here you can also start noticing some suspicious things. I mean, what is the thing at the bottom? Well, that is Tellstones, which is definitely a new addition to the game. And these minions don't exactly look like the old ones. I recognize new minions. And that is actually the minifigure of Ziggs from Max vs. Minions. I like that reference. But then of course you can also see the original Doran's blade, and yes, that is the classic Regal's lantern. Though most importantly, there is also the book. And this book, this blue book with the golden edges, is the same one that Riot used in the teasers for original League of Legends. Except here it says League of Legends Classic, confirming the name. Which is where all the glorious models started getting out. So first we were blessed with the original Dr. Mundo and Taric. And interestingly enough, you can notice that every champion actually has a skin that is one of the cheap skins that doesn't change the model. Yes, in modern terms, you would call them a chroma skin, but back in the day, that was just a skin. And then we also got the old Annie and old Ezreal with the frosted skin. And I wonder why everyone gets exactly one skin, at least in the assets so far. Does Riot want to treat this like a fighting game where on one side everyone has the classic skins and on the other side they have the special ones? Because let's be honest, I don't think people will start buying skins for this version of League. Or in other words, I don't believe it would be a good idea to let people buy skins. But who am I to say? What if this actually becomes popular, huh? People will be buying the same skins again. And I have to say, this kind of reveals that Riot had to port over all the skins manually. Because if they only give them the chroma skins, then they don't have to retarget the animations for the old models. That would be a nightmare to do for every single skin, since you are porting over to a new engine. And so hats off to whoever actually managed to do this. But interestingly enough, then there is also Kayle, who has 3 skins instead of 2. Where one of them is actually the infamous Silver Kayle, which is a special skin that you are only able to get from the Collector's Edition. Yes, it is actually one of the rarest skins in the game. But more importantly, notice that this is actually the 2011 version of Kayle. Yes, this is not what she looked like on release. Only a real boomer would remember what Kayle originally looked like. But then we also got a model for the glorious Alistar. And here, Alistar also got the gold skin, and of course, because he's also a special boy with a collector's edition, he also got the black skin from that, and on top of that, he also got the other black skin. Wait, what? So yeah, for some reason, Alistar is actually getting a special skin that has never existed before. Now I know that the hot topic around World of Warcraft is Classic Plus, but Riot is kinda ahead of the game. Because it does seem like Riot made up a new skin for the classic version. Now why would they do that? I have no actual idea. It's not like this can be a reward that you keep around for the modern version of League, because Alistar looks totally different. And weirdly enough, then you also have Tristana that also has 2 skins. She has the pirate one, which is on the edge of being different. And she also has the Riot Girl skin, which is a good reference to their original collab with Facebook. I remember it. But then Ryze, who also had a special skin, here just has the tribal skin and nothing else. No human Ryze to be seen. After which we also get a bunch of other champions, including old Gangplank and old Sion. There's also old Warwick, but that one looks weird, and I know why. Riot, these are the newer textures after you updated them. That's not what Warwick originally looked like. I remember that one. Ooh, I am old. Then we also get some more veteran champions, until we get to another really interesting asset. Rammus is also getting a new weird skin. Now what is going on with these? I have no idea, but it does seem like someone just changed the hue of the texture, which is very on brand for Classic League. After which we also found out that Classic runes are also coming back. Yes, it seems like we will be making our own rune pages just like the good old days. These come in with the classic quintessences, and yes, of course, there has to be the 1% crit chance. After which we also got an image of what seems to be all the playable champions. But something feels off. Because you see, based on what the champions look like, especially with the rework for Kayle, it doesn't seem like they are aiming to recreate Season 1 of League of Legends. No, this all lines up for roughly 2011 or 2012, which I believe would be like Season 3 or 4. But what's weird is that we also got some champions that released at the end of 2011, namely Ahri and Brand. But we are also missing some of the other classic champions like Caitlyn, Karma, Renekton, and Mordekaiser. Mordekaiser, for bloody sake! And I don't think there is any way that we are not getting one of the most classic champions in League Classic. So something feels off, and it feels like the people who are data mining think that there's gonna be more stuff dropping on Monday. And so at first sight, it might feel like Riot is not exactly aiming for a specific patch. and they are just making up something to recreate the vibe of Classic League. But based on what the data miners think, there should be more. So it seems like we are aiming for Season 3, Season 4 League. And speaking of data miners, Skin Spotlight also dove in and he found something really weird. I mean, for some reason, Kale actually has a placeholder art, because that's definitely modern Kale. But also some champions have alternative version for their loading art. For example, here is Ezreal, Ahri, or Blitzcrank. It kind of feels like we are looking at an overnumbered version in Riftbound. And I wonder if this is just a Chinese version of the art because of censorship or something, or if this is actually gonna be a reward for like mastering a champion or something like that. But if that's the case, then wouldn't it mean that Riot really wants this game mode to stick around? Because why else would there be actual rewards that last, especially if those are not in Modern League? After which, Julex also found another weird thing. There are some assets for the summoners, those make sense. Speaking of which, I forgot to mention one thing on the loading art, Journals of Justice. Really cool reference to original lore. But then there is also art that shows us old Poppy. But more importantly, you can't fool me. I remember the original mastery trees being split into red, blue, and green. So I'm pretty sure this confirms that masteries are coming back as well. And remember, yes, masteries and runes, two completely different systems. And so, that's all the info we got. So far, nothing else was found, but again, it seems like people believe that there will be more things coming on Monday. And I'm kinda sad that people are finding this on PBE, and I kinda doubt that this was Riot's intention, because this is not something that they really should be trying on PBE. No matter what game you are talking about, these classic re-releases always feed on the fact that people try this for the first time together. It's like a nice classic jump back into the nostalgia. If you first test it on PBE, you will lose the magic of the entire crowd going for it. But hey, it is still classic League of Legends and the nostalgia will be really strong. If anything, I wonder if there's gonna be any classic League creators who are gonna come back. Because that is definitely gonna be time for the boomers to reassemble. And I find it funny that after all the assets seemingly ended up on PBE, Riot kinda panicked and they quickly dropped their own teaser, where at the end they did confirm League of Legends Classic. I am so old.